Hey, everyone. I'm Katie McGregor Bennett, your host of AV Trade Talk. Special episode today. This is in collaboration with Chords. We are talking about the future of home networking and the challenge of upgrading to 10 gigabit Ethernet, why cable infrastructure is important to the wireless infrastructure environment, and all things in between. I've got three fantastic guests with me today, including Eddie Shapiro. Eddie, how are you?
Hey, doing well. Glad to be here, Katie. And it's going to be a good episode.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about your company and what you do.
I'm with Smart Touch USA. We're in the Washington, D.C. market, and I'm one of our chief designers in terms of lighting and networking and all things technology for luxury residential homes.
Excellent. Nathan, how about you?
I'm Nathan Holmes, Director of Operations for YReboot. We are a network support company that also ships you the hardware and everything for your installations, but primarily we're a support and design company for networking, focused on the residential integration channel and also small business and commercial as needed.
James?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is James Chen. I'm the Managing Director of Chords. We're a specialist manufacturer cabling, catering specifically to professional integrators.
Excellent. And I'm Katie McGregor, your host. This is Mastering Connectivity Series, episode number 2. This is a collaboration with Chords. We appreciate your guys' contributions. And James, we appreciate you being here and helping us guide through this conversation. Of course, Chords is a cable manufacturer, but this conversation is more about the importance of cable infrastructure and the role that it plays in wireless networking. As we all know, wireless networking is not wire-free. It just is wireless. We'll dig into that. And that's why you guys are here, is to bring us up to speed on exactly what that means and how that happens. So, Eddie, I'm going to throw this one at you. We're going to start this off. Why exactly is wireless not wireless? It requires wires. Can you please just give us the intro to that?
Oh, I wish I had a picture. If you could only imagine the amount of wire or cable that we pull through a home to ensure that there's an amazing wire-free network, if you will, wireless compute, if you will, so you can take your laptop around the house, to the pool, to the front, anywhere as you're getting out of your car, on your phone. We breathe, eat, sleep with wireless. You know, it's air, blood, water, and Wi-Fi. Those are the essentials of life. So we spend a lot of time on Wi-Fi, and the only way to get there is with cable. So we run cable around the home in an engineered fashion so that access points, which broadcast the Wi-Fi, work with your devices. And we do that so there's seamless handoff between rooms and areas by the multitude of access points that you have, all connected with usually Cat 6 or Cat 6A cabling.
Yeah, I think we all dream of this seamless Wi-Fi experience where, we can be free of cables. But the real world is, in order for us to have consistency and deal with, all the hard surfaces that prevent Wi-Fi from working properly, we need to have, multiple access points, and all of those multiple access points need to hand off.
We've talked about that. We've talked about that before. I mean, Wi-Fi is a technology of convenience. It's very convenient, but for it to work effectively and to be high performing, it needs to be connected to the underlying network through wire, because wire is a technology of performance, not convenience, whereas Wi-Fi is convenience, not performance. So when you combine the two, you end up with, each wireless access point can cover a certain area. So you would put as many as you need to cover the entire structure and ensure you have the appropriate, wired backbone between all those access points to ensure that performance between the APs is as expected, so that as the client device moves through the wireless environment and it moves from AP to AP to AP, the performance of each AP is consistent. So therefore the wireless experience remains consistent.
And that also helps us with dealing with interference and all the other things that we have on there, where devices are now competing for bandwidth. When someone's streaming 4K video on a TV wirelessly, often there's dropouts.
Well, and people don't understand most of the time that an access point can talk to one client at a time. So if that client is trying to stream a whole bunch of information and you've got 20 devices that are all fighting for that same access point, you can imagine how that would be difficult to provide a seamless experience, both for the device streaming and the other devices that are trying to get on, as that access point is literally able to have one conversation at a time.
Yeah.
So Nathan brought up a good point that wireless does not have the performance of wired. So often you'll see it in a home where we'll take the home office and we'll actually wire the laptop directly to the network because the speeds are amazing. But I would also say that with a really good design and with access point placement correct, that you get some pretty amazing speeds wirelessly. So the good news is that we're getting better performance on access points with a really well implemented system.
You're really right, Eddie. And look, a Wi-Fi 6 deployment, you can get 400 to 600 meg throughput in a well-designed Wi-Fi 6 environment for most client devices. But again, that potential connection is still open to interference from other devices and having to wait, whereas that 1 gig wired connection is a gig both directions at any time. So either of those will give you essentially a seamless performance, because 400 meg is a lot more than we need for really anything that we're doing. But the wired side will give you the ultimate security and performance consistency. Although, yes, we designed some great Wi-Fi deployments where you wouldn't even notice that there's a difference in day-to-day between wired and wireless.
You talked a little bit about system design, and particularly the distance between APs has definitely come up in conversation before. So let's talk about that a little bit and just offer our audience a bit of a baseline education. What are some of the common recommendations right now for distance between APs, or is it distance between APs? Is it the size of the property? Is it the construction of the property? Bring us up to speed, Nathan.
It's all of those things. The reality is, I've come up with, it's really about signal noise ratio. How much signal is between the client device and the access point? How clear is that communication? And there needs to be a certain clarity to that conversation for high data rates, consistent performance, not dropping packets, different things. And in most residential environments, the construction is fairly similar. So my typical design parameters when I'm starting out is to ensure that your client device is never more than 25 feet from an access point. This will ensure in most applications, a good connection between that access point and the client device so you can achieve your maximum data rates. And that amounts to, it's at about a 1,800 square foot footprint. But now, when you have multiple APs, you have to have an overlap, of at least 20%. So when you look at that 25-foot radius, what's 20% of that? 5 feet. Okay, so 20 feet from one AP, 20 feet from the next, because I've got overlap, really puts your maximum distance between APs at about 40 feet line of sight. This ensures that as your client device is roaming through the environment, as it moves closer to another access point, it has time to register that access point before it disconnects from the first and then authenticates to the second. So in an overall real basic rough estimate, you're at about 1,350 square feet per AP. So when you look at a house, let's say it's 6,000 square feet, based on construction, you're probably going to need 5 APs, maybe 4. But your rough estimate when you go in is looking at it in that regard. Because
we don't build round houses, right? So the expansion of the signal is circular, and obviously that's depending on the construction of the house. If you have a solid concrete walls and things like that, the sphere is somewhat changed in shape. So those are some of the things that we need to deal with. But you also mentioned noise. There's so many things that contribute to noise. The mobile phone, people's blenders, the washing machine, the refrigerator,
microwaves,
both airborne and electrical, as well as the power and the lights that the wires are actually running through.
Fish
that
tanks.
all contributes to the signal to noise ratio. So the entire implementation of the network is really important from the beginning.
Yeah, what I found was the thing that people started to understand was Wi-Fi is line of sight. So when I say, here's how I design it: stand in the farthest location you need Wi-Fi. Look, 25 feet away is the farthest you can put an access point. If I have a set of floor plans, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll put it in this closet. But the reality is, if I'm standing in that location and I'm looking at that access point, if I can't see it, that means something is interfering with that RF energy. If I can see it and I have direct line of sight, then I'm talking about the interferences like you're talking about. What is transient RF, other access points, neighbors' access points, things like that. There's always interference. But from a construction material standpoint, if you can't see that AP from where you're standing, you're going to have interference from something. You need to be aware of it. Is it a concrete wall? Is it a fish tank? Is it an elevator? Or is it just basic drywall? Is it a shower? All the different things that you can go through will affect whether or not that 25-foot distance is going to be adequate or not, or whether you're going to need to shrink that cell size due to the variables of that project.
Yeah.
Right. And there's, part of that conversation and some of our warm-up conversation involve things like talking about, some of the structures that we work in. We work in some pretty modern homes that have lots of steel, lots of glass, lots of concrete. Those things are not friendly to access points. So you definitely have to consider that when you're working on your engineering, because maybe you need 7 access points for that same 6,000 square foot house just because of the materials in the house. And then the other point is nobody wants to see an access point. So if you're going to hide them a little bit more, that may impact performance. So you may need more of them to keep them out of sight.
100% true.
Yeah, certainly underscores the need. Sorry,
I want to add one thing, because you're so right on that, Eddie. And an example, if we put an access point in a theater, which really absorbs a lot of the transient RF energy that's going through, and then you put a theater in a bathroom, which is all hard surfaces and everything, your client device could be the exact same distance and even have the same signal noise ratio. But in the bathroom, you're going to have a lower data connection rate because of all of the reflections that's happening from the Wi-Fi from that access point. It's trying to remove that echo. So there are definitely more challenges as you get into more contemporary architecture and the surfaces.
Are you saying that we should acoustically treat our room for good Wi-Fi?
I'm saying that when we design theaters, we look at how audio reflects and what we want to absorb, reflect, and
it's amazing how
diffuse.
It's amazing how physics is the same everywhere, right?
It really is, and I think that's the thing we don't think about it. We just think of, my phone connects to Wi-Fi, it's great. But the reality is, it's the same concept as AM radio to building theaters to line of sight, all of those things. So they're all parts of it.
It kind of makes me think that all of a sudden, I always thought of physics more for other things, but everything we do in technology for residential spaces involves physics, period. Whether it's the audio, whether it's the Wi-Fi, and other things like fiber out to the gate, everything has to do with physics. So good point.
So for those of you listening in, if physics is not your strong suit, you might want to go and shore up those skills, because it's only going to get more challenging in the future, which is my segue to the future. Let's talk about the future of home networking and the challenges that you guys foresee. In an earlier conversation, 10 gig Ethernet came up, but then we also dove into Wi-Fi 7. So I'll leave it to you as to how you guys want to talk about the evolution and the future of home networking. Nathan, I'll let you kick off, and then James, Eddie, chime in accordingly.
So I think we're at a evolutionary standpoint. I think James had really said that when we were talking the first time. Is this really is a big change. It's been 20 years since we really talked about the fundamental speed that everything is running on changing. Everything's been a gig for most everything we've done for 20 years. And now that's changing. And it's changing on multiple fronts, from what it takes to do cybersecurity effectively at these higher data rates, to the infrastructure of the entire network in the home and the devices that use it, and Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi 7, as we're coming into right now, which is a big portion of our conversation today, is the common name for Wi-Fi 7 is high throughput Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi 6 was high efficiency Wi-Fi. It was designed to engineer out a lot of the problems that existed within Wi-Fi from the beginning. And now that they've got that operational and that's running effectively, the next phase is, now that we've got rid of problems, let's increase the bandwidth. Let's allow devices to communicate on multiple channels simultaneously. All these different things have the benefit of more data rates, faster connection rate, lower latency, but with it is coming this huge need to develop the infrastructure, because the full Wi-Fi 7 standard is capable of 9.6 gig. So we know we're looking at, to meet that standard, we're talking a 10 gig infrastructure. And that's a massive change in the industry. From customers over the last 5 to 10 years, well, and especially during COVID, this really happened, where there was a lot of focus of, okay, I know we've been limping through with our network at the home, but we really need to upgrade this because I'm working more remotely. I need this stable. I need it better. And so there became a understanding in the consumer base that I need to spend more effort making sure that what I have at home is effective for both work and enjoyment. So the populace has started to come understanding, yes, this comes with some higher prices, some higher, a consumer level product works in many situations. Then we have professional level products, which provide, a little bit better warranties. They're installed by professionals. They've got more configuration capabilities, more ability to, tailor the environment to the customer. And then we have enterprise grade level, which gives us the ultimate in performance, configuration, support, all those. So based on the needs of the customer, these options exist at multiple different price points, but it's raised this awareness that to get the performance and the stability people are expecting, which is continuous seamless Wi-Fi in their environments all the time, it requires not only a professional to come in and understand the needs of the customer, but also there are different professionals capable of providing different levels of networks and support based on the customer's needs.
Yeah, I see a lot of parallels with, with the broadcast sector, where, originally when broadcast antennas were put up, they were just pumping more and more power into them to get further and further as more and more people signed on. And then we just got to the point where it was ridiculous, where you almost had to build a power station next to the antenna to cater for the entire population, which allowed us then, the challenge was, well, how do we be more efficient? And now that we can get more efficient, which is effectively Wi-Fi 6, well, how do we get more quality channels? And Wi-Fi, the internet has the benefit of buffering, which broadcast generally doesn't. And so some of these really expensive commercial technologies are emulated and dribbled down so that this type of communication becomes super efficient, and we can manufacture at scale because the demand is there, and ultimately drive the price to where everyone adopts the standard. So, Wi-Fi 7 for me is such a revolution in technology. It's exactly the same as free-to-air TV versus streaming, where you've got. I
look at it as from HDMI, from component video to HDMI. I think that's that big of a leap.
Yeah, Eddie.
So when you said evolutionary in the beginning, I was going to say revolutionary, because it's going to cause a revolution. I mean, there's a lot going on here. You also talked a little bit, Nathan, about kind of consumer grade, or if you will, Internet of Things grade Wi-Fi. And I think that often you see that, and without naming brands and vendors, a lot of it's mesh based, which isn't very good. The difference between mesh based and what we do on a professional level, not only is the performance dramatically better with what we're delivering and what the consumer expects, at least on the luxury end of the market, but mesh based means the first device is connected to the network, and then the next device and the next device and the next device are getting their signal off the first device. So there's only one device connected to the internet or the network. And that's just really a poor performing architecture. And so I would say two things. One, don't do that. and two, I haven't seen, and it's because it's complicated and it requires classes and education and practice. I haven't seen a lot of consumers be able to deploy their own network system well. They end up with lots of conflicts and issues with their systems. And I would say that, sure, if you want to put some kind of Internet of Things audio solution in your home and you want to do it yourself, that's fine. But I would think that the most important piece of architecture in your home, the backbone of everything else that works in your home, whether you want to do your own Wi-Fi lighting and your own Wi-Fi speakers, you need good Wi-Fi. So let the professionals do that part for you. And if you're one of those people that likes to tinker around with, different projects like wireless lighting and speakers, have at it. But make sure you have a great network, and that's where a professional can help you a lot.
Yeah, I think having a great network is crucial to any implementation before. We used to be able to implement our internet through just having the free access point that came with whatever the all-in-one. The all-in-one. We're at this talk's not about layer 3 switches and things like that, but
Why not?
When you're implementing technology in the house, you really do need a layer 3 switch. And what is that? It's just so that
I'll give you what that is because well, here and the reason I want to do this is because there's a big misnomer in the industry, and you're right. What is a layer 3 switch? A network switch that has built into it specific IC, integrated circuits, that are dedicated to routing, which is a layer 3 functionality. And that can be in a layer 3 switch, but then there's also, like the firewalls we use. The reason we use them is they have built-in dedicated ICs for routing. So it's not routing in software, it's routing in hardware. So whether it's the switch or the routing appliance, the key to it is understanding that when you get to multiple VLANs and the size and scale of these networks, the amount of traffic that could be routed or needs to be routed, having that done at a hardware level compared to a software level will provide a very different experience for the homeowner. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you go from MAC address routing to IP address routing, there's certain amount of skill that's required, because if you implement it poorly, your speeds go way down. You're paying a lot of money, but you're not getting a lot of performance.
And what I think you really keyed on there was the same thing, something that you're talking about, Eddie, too, which is one of the biggest things you have to understand is there isn't just one network solution that fits every project that exists. One of the reasons that we do a intake/discovery form when we're looking at things is the right way to approach a network is to design in for the space it's going to reside in and for the devices that are going to use the network and the expectation and experience that the customer is looking for. Based on those things, there are times where that all-in-one, Eddie, that you're talking about from the ISP, look, that's all they need. It's going to be perfect. Here we go. We got a single TV. We're up and running. Great. Everybody's happy. To a full-blown home like Eddie does, where we've got multiple VLANs, you could have hundreds of devices on the network. And keep in mind, when we tell you hundreds of devices on the network, people immediately start thinking, oh yeah, it's like a business where you've got, these enterprise grade switches and things. But no, in most businesses, you have 4 device types. You got smartphones, laptops, PC servers, and printers. That's it. And those devices from birth are designed to run on the network together. But in homes, you could have 20, 30, hundreds of different devices that were never vetted or tested to work with other devices, and they're all sharing the same network. They're all trying to communicate. The manufacturers build them in their own silos, so nobody knows if they can even effectively work together on the same network or if they have to be VLAN or segregated. So knowing what's going to run on the network or utilize the network allows you to specify, like we were talking about, Eddie, is it consumer grade, professional grade, enterprise grade? Because those give you different insights, visibility. And then you have to have the team that can support it. Because if you're going to put an enterprise grade system in, you've got to have support engineers that are capable of understanding that granular level of insight. And when you do, now you can ensure that whatever device is on the network, it's going to work great. But I think, like you're saying, James, it's analyze what's going to be on the network, analyze the space. You design the Wi-Fi for the client expectation in the space, and you design the network to support the devices that are going to use the network, which is why you have a variety of options.
Yeah, and
right,
the
to your
number of
point,
devices
though,
that we're
I think
putting
that the consumer thinks they just need an Internet of Things device, but they don't realize just how many things are on their home network. You have, your kid's iPhone, their iPad, their laptop, their AirPods, their, all these different things throw off a MAC address and throw off, the need for Wi-Fi. And when you're a technician and you're setting up these systems and you have the extra screens that nobody else has on your laptop, and you can see that there's just device after device after device. Most homes of specific size and with multiple people in it need a enterprise class system. It doesn't have to be incredibly elaborate, but it needs to be better than a consumer grade device. Or you mentioned it, but I don't know that people caught it, Nathan. The router that Comcast or Verizon gives you that has built-in Wi-Fi, it sits in the corner of your house. It's not going to work so great in your 3 or 4 or 5,000 or 6,000 square foot home. Some people think they can go plug in a little extender. Those are not great solutions. For some people, they have luck and it works. For most people, it's a frustrating and unreliable, inconsistent experience. So having access points engineered in your home properly for any home that's, 3 to 7,000 square feet, and obviously way above that in terms of square footage, is really important.
And some ISPs actually have partnerships. So they're part funded by, I won't name any names because we might get into trouble, but they're part funded, and those partners want actually your data. Or you might buy a new IoT device. Oh, that's really cheap. A water monitoring system, it's only $9.95, but it's constantly connected to the internet, and it's sucking information and communicating your information and giving it away outside. And that's how they fund these things. How many times have we, has Alexa woken up and said, are you talking about this? Are you about spending $5 million on this house? Would you like me to take this transaction and charge your credit card now? That's an extreme example, but
no, but there's two things there. You're so right about that. You have to understand the motivation between companies. If I have an ISP and an ISP has this, whatever the additional way to extend the signal is, their motivation is to keep you within something that they can control, monitor, and understand. One of the reasons to use a professional in our industry is their motivation is to ensure that your expectation as a customer is met and or exceeded once they're done working on the product. Because it's one thing to do a sale. It's another thing to have that client for life. And you're wanting to support that client for the life of the job and ensure, I don't want to sell it knowing that a week later it's going to fail. No, I want that your experience to get better over time. And I think the other thing, Eddie, that popped into my head when you were talking about that, one of the most difficult things for consumers is we have a standard for Wi-Fi 6, a standard for Wi-Fi 7 or whatever. It's written by the IEEE. The Wi-Fi Alliance then breaks it down so it's easy to understand Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7. But the reality is any manufacturer that wants to say, I have Wi-Fi 7 access points, all they have to do is meet the basic requirements of I can do these things. And now they can say, boom, I'm Wi-Fi 7. Just because I have the ability to produce or to give you a connection of that generation Wi-Fi doesn't mean you're going to have a good experience. There's a number of manufacturers out there that are very low cost. And the answer is, do they meet the basics of the standard? Yes. But do they have anything else that they build into those access points to ensure that the performance is going to be consistent when you go from one device connected to 20 devices connected? Nope. And what about when it comes to, there is an issue? Support is a big thing, and the ability to look into the devices and be able to see what's causing something. Oh yeah, these two devices that were never meant to work on the same network are fighting. Let's throw them on different subnets so they can work. So being able to say that a device meets a standard is one thing. The reason you hire a professional in our channel is so they can go, you know what, that exists. But what you want for an experience is this. To do that, we have to use this product with these products to ensure that your digital backbone is not only effective, but it's resilient and gives us the ability to support your devices and your lifestyle over the long term.
Hey, Nathan, maybe you could actually go back in time a little bit. So we've been throwing around Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 7. Could you kind of maybe go back to like 2012 and forward and kind of give people an understanding of what's happening? Because rather than just talk about these platforms, we should give people a broader context.
So the IEEE found it has basically defined Wi-Fi starting in 1997. They defined the RF standard for wireless communication and networking in 1997. And 1999, there was the first two full standards, 802.11a and b, were released. And then you start moving forward. 2004, we had 802.11g, and then 802.11n. I'm not going to go into all those specifications because even right now, which standard is he talking about? It's confusing. Is it, G, is it N, is it A, which one's better? So there's been an organization called the Wi-Fi Alliance that has existed since around 98. And their whole purpose is to vet devices as being able to meet the specifications set out by the IEEE. They realized it was difficult for consumers to understand the difference between 802.11a, b, AC, AX, what's better. So they started naming it for generations of Wi-Fi. 802.11n is the fourth generation of Wi-Fi, so it's Wi-Fi 4. 802.11ax, AC is Wi-Fi 5, the fifth generation. AX is Wi-Fi 6, the sixth generation. So as each generation of Wi-Fi has come out, just like when you look at your phone and you can see 4G, 5G, the same thing, especially Android users can look at it and see a Wi-Fi 6 or a Wi-Fi 5 symbol on there and exactly how they're connecting. So the naming convention was there to make it easier to understand. Within Wi-Fi, there were originally two frequencies of communication, 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. 5 gigahertz allows us to do some things to have much higher data rates, but we still had very few what they call channels to use. And so if you had more than 2 or 3 access points on a project, they were trying to share the same airspace. Imagine in this conversation, if you were talking, Eddie, and I was talking, and James and Katie, and all of us were talking at the same time, it would be very difficult for anybody to try to understand us because there's, so out of respect, we each only use the airspace one at a time. Wi-Fi is the same thing. So if you have 2 access points sharing the same channel, one sits silent while the other broadcasts, and then vice versa. So James had mentioned it before, we're looking for these more, channels of airspace. So starting with Wi-Fi 6, we finally can start using the 6 gig spectrum, which is opening up a whole bunch of new channels for us that are not currently in use. The whole idea is if nobody else is using the channel, I have to wait much less time for myself to be able to communicate. So on the surface, I can communicate more often. Additionally, because there's so many more channels, they've allowed us to combine more of them for higher data rates. This is also part of Wi-Fi 7. is up to 320 megahertz channel widths. And then a new concept that says, if I've got 3 different channels, why can't I broadcast on 2 of them simultaneously? So the idea being, if my client device can talk to my access point and broadcast on both 5 gig and 6 gig, I could have twice the throughput. So these are a very high level surface. The idea is, as more and more client devices has come online, we're all fighting for the same airspace. So with Wi-Fi 6, we added the 6 gig spectrum. With Wi-Fi 7, we've added the ability to send more information in shorter periods of time. We've added the ability to talk on multiple channels. We've opened up these, all these channel widths. So the whole idea is to allow devices to communicate more easily with less interference and greater efficiency.
And so, because we're all a bunch of geeks, we've talked about Wi-Fi 7 and 6, and if someone's building a home like right this minute, what do they do? Because people are probably wondering, well, what do I do? Do I do Wi-Fi 6? Do I do Wi-Fi 7? Where should you go? And
you go to Cords. You go to Cords and you get SlimCat.
Right. So that there's no such thing as future proof. You could be future ready. Just ask Eric. So you want the best cable possible for future bandwidth needs. So yes, there's a conversation about how do you wire the home? What's the best cable for that? And then what access points do you put in? You could, and I think we've talked about this, put in SlimCat from Cords and still go with Wi-Fi 6 for your implementation of your new home. But I kind of think that if your home is 6 to 12 months away from delivery, that you probably should just go straight to 7, unless you disagree, Nathan. And it looks like you may.
Well, what I think is we always get wrapped up in what am I doing today? What am I doing today? But if you're building a home, you're building a roof to last 30 years. You're building plumbing to last 30 years. You're doing your electrical to last 30 years. Why are we worried about where our technology is going to be 6 months from now? We need to consider how much time we can get out of the infrastructure we're putting into that home. That's why we're talking about performance does come from wiring. So we have to put the wiring in. If you're building a home today, the reality is, yes, you should be putting in Cat 6A because of the fact that what we have now today is capable of 10 gig. What's going to happen down the road in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? We want to be as you put it, future ready as we possibly can be. And so I think when we're putting the infrastructure, the emphasis nowadays should be on Cat 6A. James mentioned as we went into the beginning of this call that the Cat 6A has now overtaken Cat 6 as the most used wiring type in infrastructure being used today. Cat 6 had been the industry leader, and as more and more 6A has come online, that is now the highest percentage used wire in technology for wiring and implementation. So,
and we're using it because it's got higher bandwidth.
There's a number of things. You've got higher bandwidth, you've got better interference mitigation, you've got better, depending on the gauge of the wire, you've got better power distribution and different things because there's so many more PoE devices and those things. So those are all elements of it, yes.
Yeah, the construction is a lot better. The noise rejection, we talked about signal to noise, is vastly superior, which allows it to go greater distances. There's not actually any more copper in the cable itself. It just comes down to the construction, and that lowering the noise provides your wireless devices less noise to work with. Then they've got more headroom to begin with to achieve the threshold that the whole system is important. Yeah, sure, we're in the 10 gig network space, right? So Cat 5e can get to 10 gig, but only 10 meters. And that's only because of the advancement of technology.
And also, this is just
yeah. Go on.
well. And keep in mind, sorry, James, but this is one element of it. Keep in mind, you're talking just the wiring to the specific devices and APs. When you start talking about your uplinks between different mechanical rooms and different areas of a property, you are pretty much, it's necessary to run fiber on everything nowadays. Because, think about it this way. A few years back, or even, a couple of years ago, we could do 10 gig connections between our switches on copper. Okay. Well, that was fine because all our switches were 1 gig. And so we really didn't have that much, data going above that unless we were doing video over IP or those kind of things. When you start looking at, I could have, a remote switch with 5 access points, each capable of 10 gig of connections. How do you plan to support that on one 10 gig back to the main switch? You can't do that. So we're looking at, places where you might have 25, 40, or even 100 gig uplinks that are going between switch locations, and you need fiber optics to do that. So there becomes again, this is why you hire a professional to look at these things, but you have to be cognizant of when you're doing the infrastructure. It's not just the edge devices that we're looking at wiring. It's also the core infrastructure that facilitates, your different switch locations.
Yeah,
the network stack is really customized.
So that customized approach is critical to success, because we all the different technologies are effectively tools. Wi-Fi is a tool. Copper wide infrastructure is a tool. Say, for instance, you've got a batch of PoE security cameras. Well, that's the most cost-effective way to do it. You won't necessarily at this stage do fiber, but between the main trunks, you want that because that then eliminates the noise between, and then you've got that upgradability. So, there are all these different stages. And the final thing is obviously system cost.
And we talked about the most important aspect of all this is engineering. So if you're not able to engineer it yourself as a AV integration company, that's where companies like YReboot come in and can help you really deliver a great design for your client. And then knowing the right kind of cable, again, going back to cords. So James, tell us a little bit about SlimCat and why it was made and why companies like ours use it for, homes that are of a certain size.
Let me, before he does that, I want to dive into this because I think James is really, really good at describing this. But I want to describe the reason why it's so important. So you, Eddie, talked about, what do we wire a new home with today? Okay. We know we're putting Cat 6A if at all possible, because that gives us this multi-year insurance package, essentially. Right. But what about all the homes today we have that are wired with Cat 5e and Cat 6? Do we have to rewire all of those homes? Most of the time, no. What it means is making sure we have what's called N-base-T hardware on there. So on 5E, category 5E, we can do 2.5 gig connections up to 100 meters with the right hardware. On Cat 6, we can do 5 gig connections up to 100 meters. We can even do 10 gig connections on Cat 6 up to 50 meters. So Cat 6 and Cat 5e can absolutely be used in the existing infrastructure without having to rewire everything to 6A. But there are times where you've either got to run new wires, and if you are adding to a project, or if you specifically need that 10 gig, here's where James and SlimCat especially come into play.
Yeah, so with SlimCat, we looked at one of the main considerations is not every job is a new build. There's a lot of infrastructure that's been put in ages ago that needs to be retrofit. So you might have a Cat 5e infrastructure that needs to be retrofit to Cat 6a. And most homes are not that large. So with SlimCat, we started with patch leads, and that was to aid airflow, increase the density, and aiding airflow allows for better cooling. It also allows for a better use and better allocation of devices inside the actual rack itself. From there, we got a lot of inquiries to, well, if you can make it this thin, why can't we just site terminate? So there was a lot of engineering involved, and SlimCat, through that process, won a lot of awards. But the main marketing message of SlimCat is all the power, half the size. What we mean by that is we're going from 23 gauge normal infrastructure to something which is 28 gauge. You might say, oh, it's a thinner cable. What's more difficult about that? Well, if we go half the size, we need 4 times the accuracy in terms of the engineering to even make it possible. So SlimCat allows you to do Cat6 and Cat6A infrastructure up to 175 feet, so 55 meters, and maintain that noise rejection rate, that delivery of PoE++, all the features that we want. But because it's more slim, we can get it into much harder to get to places. We can retrofit. I don't know what it is about fireplaces, but people love to install things around fireplaces. Not the brightest thing because these things get hot, but imagine having to put wire through a fireplace. I wouldn't want to be drilling through that fireproof membrane. So SlimCat is one of those things where you could get the grout out and just run the white cable and regrout and get that security camera or motion detector right up in that top corner without needing to do a lot of messy work. So it's a solution product. It's certainly not to replace Cat6A infrastructure or fiber, because we've talked about how we need all of those backbones for all the different distances. But it's certainly a solution.
It's part of your arsenal. Yeah,
it's part of your arsenal. And Eddie, you can probably attest to this. The installation time is so much faster, and your clients' houses are so much cleaner for it.
Yeah, the bundles are smaller. The bundles weigh a lot less. It's just more manageable to work with.
Yeah.
So that's a really good segue. We went from sort of the technology aspect of it to the shiny box aspect of it. Yeah. Now we've gotten to the cable infrastructure and the importance of that. James, take us on a little bit of a journey, if you will. Highlight some of the important factors that go into the manufacturing of cables. Chords has done a fantastic job of providing educational content for the industry about how to spot high quality cable, or the converse, how to spot low quality cable. Bring that into view for us a little bit and provide some pointers, some tips from a buyer's perspective within the industry. Yeah. What do integrators need to be looking at from the cables that they're looking to purchase to is it a manufacturing? Is it a brand? Is it just dive into that and give some recommendations, if you would.
Unfortunately, it generally the main purchasing decision that the main P that we use is price. Because we kind of end up wanting, people just want everything for as little as they can pay for it. And, that is a natural affliction that we have. But in reality, to deliver proper engineering and to mitigate risk in our lives, we need to actually use good quality materials. We talk about it with food all the time. It tastes different. But same with the quality of the materials that people use makes a significant difference. And the thing that we use the most of with network cabling is copper. And the price can be changed depending on the quality of the copper and how you treat it. The way we manufacture our copper is we go through an annealing process, which makes the product a little bit more springy, easier to install, keep in shape. And then we also go through a polishing process. And that is to remove any of the inclusions on the surface of the copper to make sure that the copper lasts a long time. When we make a manufacturing, we're going, well, this cable is going to go in your building for 40 years. So we should make it to last 40 years so that it doesn't oxidize over time and retard the performance and start to introduce a lot of that noise through oxidization. The jacketing is also very important. The material, the toughness for putting it in, the smoothness of the jacket, the flexibility of the product, the thinness, all these things. In addition to that, the certification that goes on the production line. Is everything tested properly? We test everything on our production 100% for the performance of the product, as do a lot of many other brands. But we also certify it, and we're an ISO 9001 facility, which means what we say has to be delivered from a legal requirement. On top of that, there's all the fire and safety and things like that we need. Good cable manufacturers will pay millions of dollars a year to get UL certification. There's all these global standards we need to meet in order for the product that goes in the wall, because it goes in there with a lot of other things, and it also goes in there not knowing what else will be put in there afterwards. So there's a huge amount of safety, and that could affect your insurance. Certainly, it will affect your insurance as a professional putting it into someone's house. So that's kind of like the overview. There's a lot of stuff that we can talk, but I won't bore you with the details.
Eddie's wagging his finger. Dive in there, man.
Well, I think I heard the word certify somewhere in there, and I was just going to say that as an AV integration company, when you run your Cat 6, Cat 6A, or what other flavor of cat you're running, you should be certifying your cables. So as a homeowner, you should be for a certification report from your AV integration firm, so all the cables in your home are run correctly and will handle the bandwidth that you're paying for.
One of the things I used to talk about in my training classes is, at one point I go, what's the difference between a professional cable installer and a hobbyist cable installer? The professional is going to provide documentation that what they were hired to do has been completed to the standard of which they said they would produce. The only way for them to do that is to provide certification results that said, you hired a professional, I've installed it, here's the proof. Anybody who doesn't provide that for you is just a hobbyist who's decided to help you out, even if you paid them.
And these testers aren't that expensive anymore. So you can get a good report, prove that you did your work well, and everybody's happy.
And I think from a communicator standpoint, this is my expertise in the room, is these are differentiators. And so from an integrator's perspective, these are the things that you can provide to your clientele that differentiate your company from your competition, which not only secures your business today, but it gives more people more reason to do business with you in the future. The certification, we hear this come up time and time again, particularly at trade shows and around the Cords booth. This is a big topic of conversation and the importance of doing it, for all of the reasons that were just identified here, but then also differentiating your brand and the products that you install and the support that you provide to your clientele. Those are key differentiators. You need to start highlighting these differentiators. We don't know where they exist. That's your homework part of your homework from today's conversation, is start going down the list of things. And where is your company differentiated? And by that, I mean, where is it potentially better than the competition? Differentiated might not necessarily always be a positive thing. So take a look at where that pendulum is swinging, and can you improve that differentiation? Cable infrastructure is somewhere that you can absolutely bring your company up and above the competition, because install it right from the first time. You're not going to be rolling trucks as frequently. Eric, who you mentioned earlier, who is Eric Bodley of Future Ready Solutions, the exclusive North American distributor for Cords. He has, and if you know Eric, he has he has about 1 million one-liners that are incredible. But the one that resonates the most with me is don't install a service call. And so how do you do that, right? This is what this whole conversation is about.
Well, I have an example for you. Well, I have an example for that. So this whole conversation has been about Wi-Fi and customer experience and different things like that. So here's a perfect example that ties in that certification. Customers hired an integrator. Integrator comes in, puts this network in, puts this whole thing in, things running. Client calls in. I'm very frustrated. My Wi-Fi calls keep dropping. Whatever you put in, it's just not right. It keeps dropping. So with the solutions we put in, we have the ability to do what's a quality of experience test, where the integrators on site, they can take their client device and they start going through the environment, and our tools and the access points, the solution we use, allow us to track everything as it's going through the environment. When that device got to a certain area of the home, we saw the quality of experience take a real nosedive. When we looked at the data, it was because that client device had now roamed to that access point in that portion of the house. Well, why did the experience go down there? Well, then we took a step and looked into the access point and realized that the access point was only connecting at 10/100. It should have been connecting at gigabit. Well, those in the industry who know the difference in networking immediately go, well, yeah, that means all 8 conductors are not connected on that piece of category cable because you only need 4 for 10/100. So the most likely cause of this performance difference was a wiring issue. We had the integrator re-terminate the wire, certify the wire, plug everything back in, and amazingly, now the Wi-Fi calling experience was corrected. So when we talk about, the Wi-Fi experience, it is all based on the quality of the infrastructure, and that frustrated customer, that support truck roll, that call to support, all the different things which will now be imprinted on that customer. Yeah, they succeeded, but they're not going to forget that. Could have been avoided from the beginning by just certifying the cable when they first did the project. And so that's why it's so important to do these things and understand that with the right tools, you don't have to guess why it's happening. We can get right to the actual root cause of the problem and fix it. And sometimes even a Wi-Fi issue is caused by wiring.
Yeah. And one last point I would like to make about cabling is it's very easy to print performance on packaging or even the jacket itself. One of the things that is going to become more and more important is third-party testing. Who are these companies partnering with, and what tools are they using? That's very easy for them to declare. If they don't have the ability to do that, or if they don't provide you the actual documentation for their certification, then something is just a little bit amiss there. And you end up wearing it.
Yeah. So
not
Eddie,
all cables are the same.
Exactly. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to process it and sling it through to Eddie. So from a consumer perspective, one of the things that always drives me crazy is you go to the supermarket, you go to the convenience store, you go to any store, airport. There's a 10-foot cable for my phone, and I can get that for $3.99. That sounds like a super deal. Why is that the worst idea possible?
Well, a power cable for your phone is a little bit different, but again, everything I have found in our space in AV integration, whether that's all the way from lighting and shading to networking to power, the higher the price, the better the quality. I rarely see something of lower cost be of equal quality to something that costs more. It just doesn't work that way. So when you're buying patch cables and you're not using cords and you're using something else, rhymes with primary maybe, it's just a different quality product. So
do you think consumers understand that though? I mean,
no.
and I guess that, yeah, right. So no. So how do you get to the other side of that?
I think it becomes a trust issue. I think most people hire us because of our reputation, and they trust that we're delivering the right product at a fair price, and we're putting some engineering and experience behind it. And I often say, don't choose your integration firm based on the fact that you want Savant or Control4 or Crestron. Choose your company based on their ability to deliver the best product and experience for you. And if that means they're using XYZ product and you hope to use another one, use the one they're providing, because they're really good at that. And so it comes down to trust and experience and reputation, I think.
Yeah, you're buying an experience is what when you're hiring an integration company, you're hiring somebody to tailor the electronic experience around you to suit your lifestyle, not just on the day you move in, but over a period of time. So there's two elements to that. How well do they understand you and what you're actually asking for? This is a relationship. Just like when you go into a relationship with people, is how well can communicate? How well do we understand each other? Are we on the same page? Nope. Okay, guess what? I'm not going to be in a relationship with you. Same thing when you're hiring an AV company. You want to be able to work with the one that understands you, understands where you're going, and also has a track record of working with people that have similar lifestyles to yours. Because you can see from their existing clientele that they've given the experiences and supported those, and it's a relationship over time, because what you put in your house today will be replaced, period. You're not buying something, the stuff that's going to be more difficult to replace is the wiring, which is why it's so important that your infrastructure lasts the longest in the home. Absolutely. But the things that are connected to the infrastructure, from your access points to, could be touch panels, to anything in there, there's a lifespan of the hardware, but there's a different lifespan of the experience. And our lust, or our drive for new experiences, ensures that you're going to be replacing these things every 3 to 5 years, because the quality of experience has changed so much. So focus on ensuring that your infrastructure is as strong as possible, your network is as strong as possible, because it will support any of the experiences you want. But understand that as your experience grows and changes, you want to make sure that you've put the right foundation in to facilitate that change, and then you hire the right integrator, because that experience, you're going to be changing it over time, because it's going to evolve and grow with your lifestyle.
Right. And as we spoke about before, it's about understanding who your AV integration partner is, and understanding that there's a reputation there and experience there that really matters. And so it comes down to exactly what you just said. This is not transactional. We are not in a transaction. We are in a relationship, and for a very long time. I like to say we're one of the first people in the house, and we never leave your home. And in a good way, because we're here 24/7, 365 with support, and it's real support. You're speaking to someone, and it could be 5-10 years later. I mean, I've had families where the children were 5 and 6, and I've watched them go to college. So it's a long relationship, and you have to pick the right people who are going to take care of you now and 10 years from now, and make sure that they deliver what you want.
What's funny, Eddie, is I'm actually still very close with people in Florida that still had my voice on their voicemail system back from the late 90s when I was doing their phone system in. And it wasn't until this last hurricane that the last one was underwater and gone. Right. So you're right. It is a very long-term relationship. And that's kind of what, again, with Why Reboot, we talk about, we are a design and support company, that the cost of entry to that design and support happens to be purchase of some products. But really what we're there to do is to ensure that the design supports, the design of the network supports the, devices that are going to use it in the environment it's going to go into. But then we want to give that support for the life of the project, so that that experience stays the same or improves over time.
It does come down to the experience. And our job, all of our jobs here, is to make what is somewhat complicated on the back end look incredibly simple to the homeowner, and make it so it's incredibly simple to use. And if we don't do that, we're doing a disservice to our clients.
We are the easy button.
Yes. we are the easy button. We are the easy button. There's a couple of references that come into view for me personally, but I'll share with those of us listening in. Is from a foodie's perspective, of which I am one, knowing the source of your food is really important to knowing how the experience of that food is going to be for you. Same thing with wine. Same thing with alcohol. Same thing with just knowing your source will lead to a much better experience. It's more in tune with what you're expecting. So I think, knowing your source, knowing what the source is about, knowing what the source is committed to. And that is something, obviously, we've talked a lot about Chords specifically here in this conversation today, because this is in partnership with Chords, but this is not a Chords commercial by any means. This is simply a conversation about understanding where your products are coming from, ensuring that they're all compatible with each other, and delivering an exceptional experience to your clientele. One of the things I think, Nathan or Eddie, you mentioned of the role of the integrator and the importance of partnering with the right one. So for the audience out there who may not be part of the industry and curious, okay, great, but what's an integrator and where do I find one? Two sources exist for you. One is the organization CEDIA, which is an acronym. We love acronyms in this industry. So CEDIA is CEDIA. It's the Custom Electronics Design and Installation Association. You can find them at cedia.org on the homepage. If you scroll a little bit down below the waistline, you'll see a bright orange button, Find a Smart Home Professional. Your other option is to go to hta.org, which is the Home Technology Association. Similar manner there. They also have a Find an Integrator. They also have a budget calculator. So if you're curious about what things might cost and you just don't know where that budget might roam, play a little bit with that budget calculator, get some ideas, and it'll give you a starting point, at least, to understand what things could cost, should cost, and where to go to find those solutions. So I wanted to give you both of those. One more resource to throw at you while we're sitting here talking a little bit. You heard me talk about Chords and the resources that Chords makes available from a content library perspective. If you go to kordz.com/articles, you will find a whole bunch of articles that are there, one of which is how quality cabling helps make your connectivity projects future ready today. That is definitely one that you want to get your hands on, take a look at. There's also several other articles about how to identify quality cable. There's a whole HDMI demystified parts 1, 2, and 3. Heck, even at the top of the page, James, you took a road trip recently, totally unrelated, but there's just really great content on the Chords website that is available for all. It provides a really great education. So just wanted to throw those kind of as we're winding down here a bit today. Gentlemen, is there anything else that we did not touch on that?
Well, I'm going to put this out there because you're talking about resources. On the whyreboot.com site, under resources, we also have I guess it's under, media. We have a Wi-Fi 7 design and specification guide that talks about some of the things you have to consider as we're moving into Wi-Fi 7. It talks about, do you want to go for full 10 gig? Do you want to go in steps and go 2.5 gig because it's going to be more budget conscious? And it has some, talks about some pricing in there and some of the considerations. So it's really there to help understand this is where things are going. It's absolutely going to be at that point, whether it's 12, 18, 24 months, whatever, there's different experts are saying it's going to be at that point at different times. But because everything is so different and because the increase in costs can be so significant, we're going to find, I think, many people are going to move into this newer technology in steps. And this design guide helps you understand which steps are going to be the most beneficial for you and your customer, and where you could value engineer in the beginning and let them adopt the greater technology over time. So design guide is there, Wi-Fi 7 design guide.
Awesome.
Right. We talked about that last time, and I think that's really important. So both of those guides are important. And I would say that if you're an integrator out there, which is someone working in someone's home, putting in networks and speakers and many other types of technology, and you're not the best you think you could be at networking, work with somebody like Nathan at Y Reboot, because everything about the house, the backbone of the house is the network. So you're really failing at delivering the best experience for your client if you don't have a good network. So don't be too proud to reach out to someone like Nathan at Y Reboot and get the best network you can.
It's the one thing that connects all of our technology now.
I used to joke, I'm a digital chiropractor. My life is to adjust your digital backbone, which supports everything. So I'm like a digital chiropractor. But to tie in what you said, Eddie and Katie and everything, CEDIA has a lot of the educational assets for our industry. Between Bjorn and myself, we've written or been involved with nearly all of them over the last 15 to 20 years. So whether you want to go to CEDIA, where they've got a very defined, progressionary curriculum path to bring your technicians up, or you've got specific education where you want to just dive deep onto something, feel free to reach out to myself, my team, because Eddie's right. The homeowners and consumers that hire the integration firms look at integrators and the technicians of those integration firms as experts because we know this technology better than they do. So it behooves us, and I get knowledge every day. I'm still learning every day. I go out and get courses and upkeep my knowledge, but it's our responsibility to those people that are hiring us that we either one become the experts they think we are, or we allow ourselves to have the ability to tap into the resources we have available to still provide the expert advice and expert insight that they need, and therefore strengthen the relationship of why this person hired this integration company. And because their long-term joy and happiness with their experience is what drives this industry to growth and prosperity.
Right. And we know that past, post-pandemic, more people are spending more time in their home, outdoors. They want a great experience. And honestly, anybody that wants to talk about their network and ask questions and find out what the right approach is, I'm sure any one of us would have a half-hour Zoom call with you and help you out.
Or not want to talk about the network and have an expert come and put it in.
I started laughing because,
of course, but trying to be a resource here more than a sales entity, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and something you touched on is we haven't even brought this up, but just throwing it out there, designing outdoor Wi-Fi is about 10 times more difficult than designing the Wi-Fi inside the home, and we haven't even got into that. That could be a whole 3-hour conversation
you had
in
a
itself.
Conversation about somebody that wanted to take, I don't know how many acres it was, and make sure it was all blanketed by Wi-Fi. I don't mention any names, but that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, we did a project in the Hamptons where you had 6 acres of seamless Wi-Fi, and there were 4 buildings on the structure. And for the integrator to receive final payment, their homeowner had to start a Wi-Fi call and be able to walk in and out of every building and through all areas of the property without the call dropping. And we did it. Worked great.
Because it was engineered well. That's why.
That's why it didn't just happen that way. It was
not just
that way. Absolutely.
Well, and in all honesty, in the initial design, we did make one mistake in one place where we had to then add an access point because there was just not enough because of the way the buildings were. So even the best engineered plans sometimes need to be tweaked once they actually get put into the real world.
And you probably had, 20 or 30 access points, so you had to add one more. Not so bad.
There were 37.
There you go.
37 for 6 acres. Yeah. You did bring up a good point. And outdoor is a completely different conversation. And I'll say it's a conversation for another day. But I'll go so far as to say many of the same principles apply. It comes back to engineering, comes back to system design, it comes back to knowing who your sources are and buying the right products and quality products. Nathan, what else?
Well, and the big thing is the client expectation. It's different inside a home. Everything is, I want seamless, high-speed connectivity with seamless Wi-Fi calling. When you get outside, it changes. Well, I just need basic connectivity here, or I just need connectivity on the patio, or maybe I do need seamless Wi-Fi. So it's interesting how in the home, it's the same. But when you get outside, everybody's desired experience changes based on the customer. So it becomes a much more unique to design because it's much more personal.
Look out for those golf clubs.
I'll mention 2 people, Peter Aylett and Rich Green. It comes back down to discovery and having really good conversations with your potential or your client. You've got to understand what their use case is and what their expectations are. And client discovery is really important. It's right up there with engineering.
Client needs analysis.
All right, gentlemen. Well, I believe we have made our way around the digital backbone and the digital foundation several times here. We talked indoors, we talked outdoors. Not as much on the outdoors. Let's regroup and have that conversation another day because Nathan, you and I have had some really fascinating conversations about the complexities of outdoor installations, and not only just from a layout perspective, but also security, which I always find is extremely fascinating. So I'm just going to put you guys on the spot. We're going to have to come back and have another 3-hour conversation about outdoor. We'll do that another day, not today. While we have you, let's make a lap around the room. It's kicking off with Eddie, then Nathan, then James, if you would. How do people find, follow, and connect with you and your company? Eddie, kick us off.
So at LinkedIn, Eddie Shapiro. all one word. Instagram is Smart Touch USA. And my email address is eddie@smarttouchusa.com.
I am Nathan Holmes, and that is nathan@yreboot.com. You can go to our website, yreboot.com. I don't remember my Instagram or my LinkedIn. I know it's Nathan Holmes, but I don't remember if there's something in there. So just contact me, nathan@yreboot.com. That's the easy thing. I'm always there.
Perfect. James.
Yeah, james@cords.com. If you want to contact me directly. I'm also on LinkedIn. That's a great place to find me. Hashtag at Cords Global for all of our socials. LinkedIn, our X, and Instagram. So come find us on there. Our resources are available at cords.com. Come on in and have a dig around. There's a contact us area as well. So if you have any specific technical questions or how to access the product or even why you should look at this product, feel free to contact us there and we will get right back to you.
Excellent. And for those who are not familiar, Cords is KORDZ. So Cords, KORDZ. I want to take a moment here to mention that CEDIA Expo is coming up, at least for us. As we sit here recording today, boys and girls, I am sorry to say it is less than 80 days away, but I'm also happy to say it is less than 80 days away. For those of you who are listening in, who are in the industry, I hope you're planning to attend CEDIA Expo. It is in Denver again this year and it takes place at the beginning of September. You can find all of that information if you look at CEDIA Expo on the internet. You will find lots of information. Everything is starting to ramp up now. Make sure you go and see Yreboot. Make sure you go see Cords. Make sure you reach out and connect with Eddie or any of these three guys, all of the three guys together. Loads of information and knowledge to be gathered there. In the meantime, should you not be attending CEDIA Expo, again, go back to Yreboot, go to cords.com, go to Smart Touch USA, and continue learning, continue the conversation there. If there's a topic you would like to talk about on AV Trade Talk in the future, hit me up on the sphere. Let's have that conversation and bring that conversation to the surface. Until then, I'm Katie McGregor-Bennett, your host of AV Trade Talk. This has been Mastering Connectivity Series with Cords. I appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you on another episode. Thanks, everyone.